Welcome to the Knowledge for Men show. Your life will never be the same.
Your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development.
I want to die empty of regret. I want to die empty of my best work. We don't understand who we are. Instead, we're living out somebody else's narrative.
What one man can do, another man can do. If it's been done, it can be done again.
Being yourself and being your truest, most authentic self in every moment. If it scares you or makes you a little afraid, do it. Follow your heart and your gut.
The first stage, I think, is finding you, like finding out who I am today.
Stuff will not work. You will have things that fail. Success is when you're a happy, fulfilled person. How do you define success?
It's your life, and you are the creator of the movie script that is your life story.
Attention, if you are a frustrated man who feels like he is not getting the results he wants in his life, health, wealth, relationships, and personal growth, then I've got a powerful free video training for you to help you become a strong, grounded man so you can unlock unlimited power in your life, business, and relationships. Go to kfmconfidence.com to get instant access to this training. Again, that's kfmconfidence.com. If you want a Cliff Notes version of the best material that I've learned after 300 interviews on this podcast about being a stronger, more powerful man, then it's all here at kfmconfidence.com. All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Mark Devine, a former Navy SEAL commander. He also runs SEAL Fit, the training center where he trains thousands of pro athletes and military professionals, SWAT team members, first responders, and special forces candidates looking to build strength and character. He's also the author of The Way of the SEAL and Unbeatable Mind. He's a New York Times bestselling author. Mark, this is his second time coming on the show. It's a pleasure. Mark, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Andrew. Super good to talk to you again.
All right. And Mark, let's dive in with a favorite success quote or some sort of saying that you've lived by that's helped you on your journey.
Yeah. Okay. So there's one that I literally read every single morning as part of my morning ritual. And it comes from a fellow named Patanjali. It's one of his sutras. And it goes like this. Be friendly toward the happy, compassionate to the unhappy, delight in the virtuous, and disregard the wicked. And so I love that because it is really a guideline toward, comprehensive behavior and ethos, right? And just to be able to fulfill even a fraction of that requires great restraint and self-control. So it's a nice kind of way to kick off my day, along with, the other things that I do.
And how has something like this helped you on your journey? Have you been challenged with having to own this and really live up to these values? Are you pushed in different directions?
Well, to consider every single one of these elements, being friendly to the happy. A lot of people have difficulty finding pleasure and enjoyment in other people's success. And so that's something that, I continually work on. I'm not saying I have a challenge with it, but, if you're really honest with yourself, sometimes, most people feel a little tinge of envy or something when they see massive success. And quite frankly, it's actually really nice to notice that and to turn it around and be really, really, delight in their success. And then on the flip side of that is, I've been screwed over many times in my life, and it's very easy to get pulled down into the negative spiral of thinking, boy, what a jerk, or I can't believe that happened to me, or, how could someone be so, whatever, evil or mean? That just keeps you trapped, or me, I should say, trapped in a negative spiral, feeding the fear wolves. So it's a practice in and of itself to disregard the wicked. Just expect that there's going to be shit that happens and that people are going to, operate out of their paradigm, and that paradigm isn't going to, meet yours by any stretch of imagination. And there's going to be people out there who steal from you and call you names and do all sorts of things. And I'm not saying not to defend yourself in a righteous manner, but you don't want to be obsessive about it or attached to it. So that's what I think he's saying. It's just disregard it. Let it kind of go.
I think I can relate to this. I recently had a team member who left and started taking clients and
Sure.
speaking negative of like bad about me and saying things that aren't true to other clients and really putting a bad kind of image of who I am,
Sure.
onto others. And it's completely not true. And I was so good to the guy, but I can relate, because if I live in that, then my whole day is really being run by that scenario. And
Right.
I'm just operating on this negative mindset. I feel like I'm coming from a place of scarce, and it's easy for me to think, okay, I could go at this guy. I can come at him. I could attack him too. I can give him more of his own medicine. And I feel like that's my gut reaction, but it takes a certain level of being grounded for me to take a step back and breathe and go, okay, this is just pulling me further and further away from my mission. It's pulling me away from what I value and what I'm actually doing. And I'm playing at his level, which means I'd have to, I guess, drop to that level of thinking.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, you have to kind of stoop down, and then you get sucked into that negative energy vortex, and it holds you down there until you can wake up from it and kind of crawl yourself back out and realize that entire exercise weakened you, or kind of stained the energy of your day, like you said. And so it's actually a higher order of thinking that, it's good to remind yourself that, hey, there's going to be situations that you run into even day to day. Maybe not at such a level that that happened to you, but that exact scenario has happened to me at least 4 times in the various businesses I've had. And I've learned to just be, okay, there it is again, take measures to protect yourself, but don't, get sucked down into this, into that negative energy.
Yeah. Recently too, I have a friend who hired a very talented salesperson onto his team. And he was so good that he was willing to start a new company and go 50-50 because this guy was so good. And this guy went from making a solid 6 figures, doing very well in his sales career, to he became a millionaire within a year, just because my friend had made him a partner in this business. He then went and took all the contacts and a lot of the clients and lead flow, places where leads were coming, and took them and developed relationships with them and created a plan. He found through emails that he was planning this 3 months prior to it erupting. And then, so after a year or so, he now exited, and he took the team and the clients. And I just was like, my friend is devastated because he's like, how could I have done it better? I gave him 50%. And I gave him complete authority and autonomy and freedom. And I thought that I did what no other businessman would have done. And I made him a millionaire. And this guy's his whole family's driving luxury cars. And it's just, and he bought a brand new house that my friend helped him acquire. And it's just, in those situations, I'm thinking of my friend as we were talking, and he's devastated and he doesn't know how he could have done it better. But he's in a crisis. This is very small compared to my situation of an employee just bad mouthing me publicly. But how do you now, for the audience to gain lessons from this, how can someone in a state of crisis remain grounded and stick to their core values and move on and find those lessons and move on, rather than drowning in defeat and scarcity, all that?
Yeah, I mean, Andrew, there's so many places to even start, but let's link it back to the quote, because that's kind of how we started there.
Yeah,
that's part of what I call my morning ritual. The reason I read that, and it's kind of like the last thing I do, but it's the last thing of a simple but kind of important process that I go through to ground myself. And not everyone, but most people have some sort of ritual in the morning that kind of gets them going.
Yeah.
And for me, it's critical because, part of my philosophy is that every day you live is a lifetime of lessons, a lifetime of opportunity, a lifetime of insight if you're present enough to experience it. And in order to live a life that intimately, then you've got to prepare for it, right? And so the morning ritual is the quintessential warrior's preparation to win the day in their mind before they step foot onto the battlefield of their lives. And so it requires great sensitivity to the quality of your thinking and developing, emotional control around things that could potentially happen to try to, or that will interrupt your chi, your flow, your energy, your momentum. So cultivating a sense of detachment to the outcome. So you've got your clarity around your mission. You know what you want to accomplish this day. And that mission is tied to your broader overarching, tactical targets. Those are your kind of 1 to 3 year goals. Let's just say, if you're going to relate this to goal setting, and those tactical targets are related or connected to your vision for your life. So everything is lined up. And so this process is very much one of alignment, Andrew. So we wake up and like you kind of remember or come, when you wake up from your sleep, that act of remembering who you are, if you just get onto your iPhone and just, plug into the news cycle, then you're kind of like, plugging into the negative energy, the worst of humanity, without taking the opportunity and the time to remember by putting yourself back together as a whole person, right? Like the opposite of dismember, who you could say, is to kind of like remember. And so we start the day by becoming whole, by looking at, okay, who am I? Why am I on this planet? Oh yeah, that's right. I am here because of these unique aspects of me. Like Mark Divine, the deeper sense of who I am is being propelled forward in a certain unique direction that's different than you, Andrew, even though our lives intersect with this, in this world of podcasting and trying to inspire and help people grow. But your way of doing it is very distinct and unique, and than for me, and vice versa. So I kind of connect to what that is, that essence of myself, which is different than my thought patterns, right? And so that process of connecting to my essence is a process of turning in. So I've already been kind of turned in, but unconsciously through my sleep cycle. That's why this is so important to do first thing in the morning before you begin to turn outward again with activities of the day. So I begin first with a physiological turning in. That's where the box breathing that you mentioned, that Tom Bailu, my friend, had told you about. Yeah. That basically gets us in control of our physiology, and it tunes in and turns in our physiology to our more refined nature beyond the physical. And then we begin a process of essentially concentration or focal point training, where we narrow my focus to a singular thought. And so that focusing becomes on what I call my ethos. And this is the articulation of who I am, what it is I'm doing on this planet. So that becomes a singular focus. That's a concentration kind of exercise in and of itself. And then I'll turn in further and do kind of an awareness exercise where I'll connect to the essence, right? That part of me that is beyond thought. And that's when I kind of really feel, okay, now I'm ready, right? I've grounded myself. I'm connected to my higher, self. I really am clear about why I'm on this planet again and what I'm going to do about it today. Like, what are the major things and how's it going to go? And I visualize it. And then I'll read some inspirational things. So I'll go through a gratitude list. So that's now to ground myself in a more positive mental state. So gratitude is a great way to do that. And then I've got a few quotes and affirmations I read, and that's where that quote kind of comes in. So long story short, all of this is to set the stage for me to go forward into the day connected to that higher aspect, which isn't so worried. It's like the water underneath the chop of the ocean. If you think about all the things that are going to happen to you today as the surface chop, I'm entering the day from the depth, that still water that runs deep beneath. And so in that sense, it's the best way, in my opinion, but it takes some work. It's the best way to stay detached from all of that turbulence and all that negativity and all that bullshit that's going to come flying at you, because you've already grounded yourself in your essence before even stepping foot into the day. Like I said, it's a simple in concept, but not easy to do. It takes practice and a commitment to doing that. And we could talk more about the tactics of maintaining resiliency in the face of those things, because I still employ those. Like what I teach SEAL candidates and whatnot, I still employ those myself when those choppy things hit me. But I'm not far from that essence, that essential nature, right? Because I've grounded in it first thing in the morning. So it's easy to get back there.
Yeah. How much time do you spend on this in the morning? Is this like a 15-minute, 30-minute, hour long, or just
15?
However?
It depends on how much time I have. I'd love to spend an hour and include some movement and some longer meditation. And so I do that on the weekends. There's sometimes I'll spend 2 or 3 hours if I have the time. But generally speaking, like on a typical day where I've got to get up and about and I've got stuff to do, 15 to 20 minutes, right, is about what it takes me. And if I'm really pressed for time, I will condense it, to 5 minutes. But when I do that, I feel like I'm leaving something on the table. And if I miss it by some sort of, crisis that just propels me out of bed, then I really try to come back to it at some point in the day.
Yeah.
It's important to me.
I really like it. Have a morning ritual to prepare to win the day before you step onto the battlefield of your life.
Yeah.
I really like that. And so I'm curious, how is it that we're preparing for the day? We're going into the battle of the day. Let's say we encounter a massive failure. And how do you handle those failures? Do you just take the lesson, keep moving? Do you reflect on it? What is that process of failure? Do you even register it as failure? Just what is going through your mind when a failure? It's clear that this is a failed project.
There's a lot of tools. Probably the dominant one that I rely on is my Navy SEAL training, which taught me that a failure is simply a way to learn how to do something better, right? It's just it's like the Stoic principle of the obstacle's the way, which, my friend Ryan Holiday, titled a book on that. The failures are expected. I don't go into a day naively expecting it to be perfect. That would be nice. Actually, I might even sense that I'm missing an opportunity to grow. As a warrior, I seek challenging circumstances and challenging training so that I can learn and grow. And I don't shy from things that could have, what others would call the elements of failure in them. So yeah, in a sense, Andrew, I don't really look at failure the way other people do. It's a word. I acknowledge that the word exists in my language. I might even use it sometimes even unconsciously. For me, if you set up the conditions for growth and constant momentum toward your target, toward your objectives in accomplishing your mission, then you're going to have scenarios arise, and large, medium, and small, where things don't work out according to plan. And so therefore, I don't try to plan things out to a gnat's ass. I have a plan that is decent, that has a reasonable chance of success. But I also know that, there's a 20% of it that I'm just going to have to figure out along the way when the resistance hits, right? And those resistance is what other people will call failure. So back to our earlier discussion, if someone steals my client list and takes my entire CrossFit gym and opens up somewhere else, well, that's happened 3 times. That's okay. That sucked. Don't sit there and dwell on it, get sucked into it. Just let's figure out how to mitigate that risk in the future and move on, right? And so I've actually shifted my business model multiple times as these opportunities / failures have come along. You know what I mean? And at each one of these points, I could have dwelled in the negative and gotten stuck there. When my government contracting business got literally ripped out of my hands by Blackwater, and they took the contract that I had to mentor SEAL candidates nationwide. It was a $10 million opportunity. I could have sat there and fought them. I could have challenged it, and instead, I just said, you know what? That's I was a little minnow swimming in this massive sea with these 10-ton sharks. I'm surprised I made it this far. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What did I learn from this, and how could I take what I learned and find the seed of opportunity out of that and to capitalize on it? And that became SEALFit, where I basically was able to evolve the system to even be better because the government didn't let me do even a tenth of the things that I wanted to do, and serve, thousands of clients one-on-one individually as a private relationship versus serving them through this government contract. So that was a massive failure that I turned into an even more audacious success or opportunity. So I said a lot in that, but generally speaking, it's more about how I approach the concept of failure. I expect it. I even welcome it. It's kind of like, again, the warrior archetype, the warrior mindset is really unique. It scares some people because they think, oh my God, it's going to be really hard. But the reality is, through the training and preparation of resiliency and mental toughness and focusing and detachment and simplicity, you get to be a little bit more clear about what's important and what's not important. And what's not important really is, the latest manifestation of your business. Because if something comes along that's going to trip that up or cause you to, to realize that there's some holes in it, then that's good news, right? Same thing with a SEAL heading toward the mission. If there's a critical failure point, a critical node that can completely shut down the mission, you need to know that sooner than later, right? You don't want to find it out on target. You want to find it out, 20% or 30% into the mission, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can shift on the fly.
What is your warrior ethos?
This is a tough one to answer in a short conversation, because my definition of ethos is essentially the set of principles based upon your self-concept of who you are and why you're on this planet, infused with what you're passionate about, so that you know that when you're pushed, right, to the limit and pressed to the wall, like warriors are, expected to be, and to fight soundly, that you're going to stand your ground. You're going to stand your ground. So I've largely adopted a lot of my Navy SEAL ethos principles. For instance, never leave a teammate behind. That's a strong principle in the SEAL culture, right? And so I've got a very loyal, a sense of loyalty to my teammates and my tribe members, and to almost to a fault, because not everyone in the business world shares that loyalty. It's funny how that theme just we started with it. So
I was gonna share. I can see how that would hurt deeply, because that's like striking your core when someone does it to you, or breaks that agreement or that value.
Right, exactly. So I've had to take that value and then support it with a value of essentially working with people who are on the same trajectory as myself, right? So, going into business with someone just because they're an exceptional salesperson, I might have done that 20 years ago and gotten myself in the same situation as your friend. But today, I'm very cautious and much more discerning with the type of people that I entangle with, that I want to dance with, so to speak. And that means, being more patient and more prudent in terms of how you select and test people's, loyalty and, I guess, level of consciousness or stage of development and their ability to interact with you. So that, I don't have a whole lot of business partners now, and maybe that's one of my blind spots or faults. I have a lot of people supporting my business, but I've gotten away from taking partners on where equity is involved and lots of capital and money is involved, because I've noticed over the years that clouds judgment, and things can get really sticky quickly. So I guess that's part of my ethos. And this notion of living with honor and integrity on and off the battlefield speaks to the idea of wholeness and integration. So one of my really powerful and important, probably the most important aspect of my personal ethos is that, that the human being is operating, generally speaking, out of a very limited set of resources, and they have a vast potential that is largely untapped. And so it is my mission. I made it my mission to help people untap, or to tap into that potential. At SEALFIT, we call it 20x potential. 20 times more you're capable of at any time than what you think you are. And so, because a warrior must lead from the front, and I call it eating your own dog food, I've got to essentially use my own training to demonstrate on myself first, right? I can't ask my team and tribe to go do something that I haven't tested first. So, we design the hardest training, and I do the hardest training right alongside my teammates and my tribe. And, if we say, hey, our challenge this month is X, I do X plus 1. A great example is Friday. We were like, hey, let's put out a challenge to our tribe. And the challenge was, we're going to do an hour-long plank hold followed by 1,000 push-ups.
Oh, shit.
And so we did it. We did it Friday afternoon, and it took me an hour and 45 minutes. 60 of that was the plank hold. Then, without taking any rest, we dove right into the 1,000 push-ups, and I did those in 49 minutes. And it was deeply inspiring. And we were clear about our why. So we had an individual, Kirk Deligianis, who passed away at a SEALFIT event last year of a myocardial infraction, an athlete's heart. And so, we did it for him. And we honored what he taught us, and we honored his example of someone who threw their heart into something, that he was passionate about. And there you go. That was an example of essentially that ethos of, hey, we do hard things, but I don't ask people to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. And so there's a number of other that is related to this SEAL principle of earning your trident every day. So, this notion that a lot of people have, they say, well, I've got this, I've got the degrees and I've earned the money and I've got the nice car and the house. And so therefore I've made it. And therefore, I'm done, right?
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah.
And now that's not the warrior way. The warrior way is to wake up every day and say, okay, one day, one life. What am I going to do today to earn the respect of my team and my tribe and to be there for my family and to make myself better? Right. And so that's why, we go toward the challenge, because we know the answer of better lies in the challenge, not in the margarita on the beach, all the time. Yeah. And so we're looking for opportunities to grow every day. We got to earn our trident of success. The trident is the Navy SEALs insignia. Yeah. And I know guys who lost their trident. Everyone thinks, hey, once a SEAL, always a SEAL. That is not true at all. Right. You get through SEAL training and you earn the Navy SEAL trident, which is your insignia. But you show up every day after that, and you got to put out to keep that respect and to keep that insignia. And if you lose the bubble and you lose the respect of your team, then guess what? You're going to be off the team at a minimum. And worse yet, you could lose the trident. They could literally take it away from you.
Wow. It's like when you said people reach some level of success and then, they stop doing what they used to be doing. So the things that got them to where they are, they stopped doing because they kind of just felt like, hey, I'm successful. I don't have to do these things anymore. I've made it. Life should be easier now. So I really like that. Earn your trident every day. I like the one day, one life. And I find that to be something that we can always hear every morning. Now, it sounds like you have, so I don't want to lead into this. Have you had opportunities that were more than financially favorable, but you felt were out of alignment with your warrior ethos so that you had to withdraw?
For sure. I would say my first business that was a microbrewery restaurant called the Coronado Brewing Company. Yeah. And it's cranking along today. It's like we were the third brewery to start up in San Diego, and this is in 1996. So you can imagine, here it is 2017, it's 21 years old, and yeah, it's a very, very financially successful business. I started it with my brother-in-law, Rick, and then, it started to go south when he brought his brother-in-law in. And now, we were equal partners, but diluted by the shareholders, all of whom essentially invested in me and my ability to get the business up and running. Now, generally speaking, of course, they were investing in the business plan and whatnot. But anyways, without getting into all the gory details, let's just say that our ethos, the ethos of my partners and myself, diverged fairly early in the game. Within a year, I realized that we had a problem, and that we were operating from a different paradigm and had different goals and a different vision for what this business was. And of course, now it started to be really successful. It was started to crank. And then, when I tried to do something structurally about this impasse that we had reached, it turned into, an ugly mess, right? It turned into a challenge, some proxy battles and legal fight. And so at that point, I had to step back from it and reconnect with my warrior spirit and, listen to my wife, who was actually the sister of these two guys, and say, okay, what is this all about? Do we really want this? And I walked away from millions and millions of dollars to just get away from the whole thing and move out, just start over. Right. And I'm super happy I did, because had I stayed in any part of it, it would have locked me in some sort of, negative cycle with those guys. And I wouldn't be here today.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that takes so much courage to walk away from that much money to stand true to what you believe in. I think that is like a testament of a grounded man.
Yeah, it's not easy, like I said, but we don't do easy, and if you do want to do easy, then you're probably listening to the wrong podcast. Having said that, hard doesn't have to be hard in the sense that the way you traditionally, look at it. We look at hard as fun. Like we call it embracing the suck. The reason we did an hour-long plank followed by 1,000 push-ups was because we knew that if we embraced the suck and got through that it would be immensely rewarding. And it was. And it was the kind of reward, like I looked at the few guys who did it with me, and there were like no words for it except just look at each other in the eyes with it, like that stare that just says volumes, right? And be like, yes, wow, like wow. And it was worth every moment of that pain, especially to connect it to a deeper why. So walking away from the brewery was hard. It took me a while to come around to being able to let go. I wish I could say that it was an instantaneous decision and I just stepped into my higher self. And no, that was 21 years ago. And it took me about a year to work through this and be like, yeah, I got to let go of this. There's nothing in this that's going to be good in the long term. It took me several years to find my feet again after that. But like you said, it was free of all that negative energy. And man, like what you can only, hindsight is 20/20. You can only see the value of your decisions in hindsight. And that was an important one.
What did it feel like maybe days or weeks after you made that decision to walk away and you're like, oh, it's gone. I don't have to deal with this anymore. Like, what was that feeling of like maybe peace, joy, freedom, or was it painful?
Yeah, when you're that close to something, there's all sorts of emotions that get wrapped up and you kind of disentangle them one at a time. And I think that's why I'm big, as you know, on emotional development, especially for men, because we don't have that in our society. It's not something that is generally something that guys move toward, even though I think that they're starting to open up to it. That was one of the things that got me into as a strong advocate of therapy and emotional development as a developmental tool versus something to do when you theoretically are broken. And it was largely because my wife is a therapist. And so I had the advantage of being able to process all this stuff in real time with someone who understood that world. And it was extremely useful and beneficial. And it really set the foundation for me to be much more emotionally stable and in control for future business opportunities and entanglements. But that first business, was a tough one. Now, I felt a sense of, failure, like you said, but not like, okay, that was in retrospect, that was a huge success. Like, I'm very proud of it, but I didn't get to benefit in the upside, at least a fraction of it I did, but not much. Enough to get me up here to where I live and to buy a piece of property. So that was really nice, right?
Yeah.
But the business is probably worth, I don't know, $50 or $100 million now. I'm just winging it, but it's it's significant amount of money that I walked away from, and we owned the real estate and all that. So I felt you got to deal with all that, you got to process all that, and so a little bit of also guilt toward the shareholders that were really trusting me to 10x or 20x their money, and I got them out, but only at like 1.2x. So that was not great. But so there was a lot of different emotions, but at the same time, like I think what you were alluding to, it felt like this massive kettlebell had just been cut loose from my ankle. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like you had a vest on you, or you're running with the vest and it's finally
off. Exactly. All of a sudden I just dropped the vest after, rucking for 100 miles. And I'm like, whoa, I feel so freaking light.
Yeah. And I guess what is that worth to you, or to someone who's also going through a challenge? And when you finally let go, it's like, what is that feeling worth?
Right. And there's never been a time I said to myself, boy, I wish I held on to that for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In every scenario, I think, why didn't I think of this sooner? And the point is, I did think of it sooner, but you were just unwilling to let go. Back to that idea of attachment. We get attached to these things as our pet projects or our pet ideas, or even people who just aren't helpful or are flat out hurting us in life. And through codependence or dependence, we just don't let go, or we're attached to our own brilliance or our own project. And we can't see through the other side. And that's why practicing that non-attachment is such an important skill, such an important part of it. I think that has to be part of everyone's, ethos if they're really going to succeed at a high level. Frankly, you can't take it with you anyways, right? It's like chances are, unless some breakthrough technology, which, unlikely to happen because it'll change the nature of what it means to be human. But if there's some way that we're going to live to be 1 billion years old, well, maybe that's going to change things. But as far as I know, you and I are not going to, survive past 100 and maybe 20, maybe 150 if we're lucky, right?
Maybe Elon
So you
Musk
can't take
is
with you.
doing something that we're not
Yeah,
aware of, and that'll be
right.
cool.
Well,
So
change a lot that happened, that's for sure.
yeah, his next TED talk will be about that. Two things came up from that question here. Two things here. What do you think happens to a man who does not embrace his emotions and doesn't actually process? You were talking about working with your wife through therapy, and you found that it was very healthy and helpful for you,
Yeah.
especially as a man. It's not something that men lean towards. So what do you think happens to a man who does not do that for his entire life?
Well, I think you can get really stuck. Here's something I think that's really important for people to understand is that you can only grow in as far as your shadow self will allow you to grow. So what I mean by that is we can do all of the knowledge seeking on the planet. We can meditate for 20 years. We can do yoga. We can do advanced spiritual practices. We can do everything that every one of your guests on all 300 and something podcasts on Knowledge for Men has recommended, and do it like with incredible discipline and in faith. And yet if you've got an emotional blockage, which pretty much from my experience everybody's got some form of emotional shadow, right? Because these form very early in our lives, in the first 10 to 20, 15 years, maybe 20. And we don't have the knowledge or the wisdom to deal with them at the time. And so these situations of getting stung and hurt and shamed and, whatever they are, they get buried. And that's what the psychology profession calls the shadow. They get buried, and then they get, the stuck, energy. It becomes stuck energy, and then it comes back throughout your life in different ways, and largely to try to release itself, or you trying to release it at a very subconscious level. But if you don't take a look at that and begin to work with it, then you suppress it because it's not comfortable, right? It's uncomfortable to say the least.
Yeah.
Emotional work. So you end up getting stuck pretty much in a rut. I love it when one of my meditation teachers told me recently. Last year, I was in a 500-hour training for yoga and meditation and breathing, and he said, "You know what? If you're an asshole and you meditate for 20 years, chances are you're going to be a bigger asshole at the end of that 20 years because the meditation is just going to magnify that imbalance." You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So, in order to grow up, we also have to clear up our past, right? And we do that through emotional training. Now, the big innovation or aha for me is that it's kind of like, let me say it this way. I started out with SEALFIT with a stated objective of inoculating special operations soldiers from the normal causes of combat related stress. I wanted them to go into combat with the skills to be able to be extremely in control mentally and emotionally, to be able to activate flow on demand so that they could they could control time and literally see the bullet coming from them toward them like Neo at the end of the Matrix. Now, I know I wasn't able to accomplish that level of mastery in the short period of time I had with a lot of these SEAL trainees, but they all went on to just dominate buds and to have, every one of these guys is having a really, really successful career. And so I'm quite confident that I had an effect, that the training has had an effect on inoculating them from, combat related stress and being able to do a better job. Right. And so I think that emotional development is the same way. You can wait like for the military guy, send them into combat, and then when they're out, hope that they don't get PTS and realize that they all do and that they need major, major, restorative work. Or you can work with them up front and give them the tools up front so they can become their own inoculator against that kind of stress. Emotional development is the same way. You can wait until you're broken and confused and your emotional shadow has completely torched your career, your relationships, and then you've got to do the the post-traumatic emotional work, right? And that's how most people see therapy in the West, is that you go when things fall apart, right? It's like medicine. Or you can flip it upside down and say, hey, I'm gonna make emotional development part of my developmental path, right? So I've got some cognitive and some mental things that I do, and I've got some physical things that I do, CrossFit or strength training, maybe MMA, and I've got this emotional training that I want to do because I want to clear up my past so that I can, not block my future growth. And then you might have some spiritual training, in the way that is meaningful for you, right? So that's kind of, I just did a roundabout way of describing our Unbeatable Mind training, because it is that where we say, okay, we want to develop on these 5 capacities that we call the 5 mountains: physical, mental, emotional, intuitional, and kokoro, which means heart, mind. And so we don't take any of those for granted. We think deeply about how we're going to activate each one of those and train each one of those in our lives, and we develop a training plan around it. So there is something that we're going to be doing daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annually in every one of those 5 areas. And one of the ways that we can do emotional development is to get engaged with a team that holds you accountable, and then to challenge yourself with that team, right? That's what I learned from the SEALs. That's the SEAL model. That's the SEAL Fit model. But you can also, I learned from my wife and from a lot of other amazing emotional teachers and coaches and therapists, that you can develop your emotional life through deep immersion, sessions, that are focused on the emotions, or a process of therapy one-on-one with a really competent, therapist who's an emotional coach. And so we recommend that guys do that, because it's really well received when they do, and they open their mind to this notion that, hey, you can do this stuff as preventative, but more developmental, right? It's an important piece of the developmental model.
Have you ever felt like you weren't the strong, grounded man that you know you're capable of becoming? Like there's something more inside of you, but you don't know how to get it out? Me too. Years ago, I was broke, sleeping on my brother's couch, and just got out of a serious breakup that left me on the floor for months. Now, I have a multiple 6-figure business. I'm in the best shape of my life, have an abundant dating life, and live on the beach here in San Diego. I want you to break through too and create the life that you want. And because people kept asking me so many questions, I've created this free video training series on becoming a strong, grounded man so that you can have more freedom, love, and connection in your life. I'll also teach you how to build real backbone to boost your masculinity as a man so that you can have more respect, power, and confidence personally and professionally. Simply go to kfmconfidence.com to get this training. Again, that's kfmconfidence.com. Also, I share the #1 conversation that your father never had with you about women. That will be a major wake-up call for 90% of you and will improve the quality of your relationships forever. Go to kfmconfidence.com to get this free training today. Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guests will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime. Really good. I wanted to get your insight on that. And the second thing I had was you talked about being disattached from the outcome, or being disattached from the goal. So here's where I feel that there could be some questions from the audience, which is, how do you go after a goal with everything you have at a level 10 while being disattached to that outcome? It feels like it could be like there could be some resistance, or like if I don't really want it to happen, then why am I going to go all in? Why am I going to put everything I have into that one thing?
Yeah, that's great. Being non-attached to the outcome is not the same as saying you don't care if it happens or not. Actually, you could care very deeply, right? It's how you define the outcome and what level of energy you're going to put on it, right? So let's just say, let me use my kind of vision, right? So my vision is through my training programs, which are all fundamentally grounded in this model that I've just described to you that I call integrated development. No, it's integrated leadership development, integrated warrior development. The warrior side is through SEAL Fit, and the leader side is through Unbeatable Mind. And the process is to train those 5 capacities of the physical, mental, emotional, intuitional, and kokoro to evolve ourselves to a higher and higher level of awareness. Right? So it's a vertical development program. Now, through my businesses, and now in the Courage Foundation, which we recently started, I have a stated goal to impact 100 million people. Impact 100 million. Doesn't mean I have to train them, but if I can train 10 million, then those 10 million will, through their example and through their, the way they live their lives, they can each touch or influence 10 people. Then we're close to, then we're at our 100 million. So whatever, it's a big number, right? And it's just to inspire me, right? But if I only was able to impact 10 people, then I've met my mission, right? I mean, and to be fair, if I've only positively impacted one person, but that one person goes out and masters him or herself to a level that far exceeds me, and that person becomes, an unbelievably or an extraordinary teacher, and they impact 99 million people, 99,999,999, then I also accomplished my mission. So I'm not attached to the details of the outcome. I'm focused on the vision, right? And so part of my training is to have people get really clear about the vision and to get super passionate about their why. So every day they show up, and I don't say my why today is to train another 500 people, or to convert 20%, or to land another 6 clients, right? My passion today is to stay true to my vision of building an organization and developing myself so that I can be the type of person who is worthy of serving at that level, and to drive forward to some of the tactical targets that I have on my goal list today. And if I've got some client meetings and whatnot, and I land those clients, great. If I don't, then it doesn't matter, because it's the momentum of the entire alignment with the vision, which is very, very motivating for me. It's not how many clients I close, or the actual numbers, or how much money I put in the bank, right? Those are more like symptoms of the system, right? If the system is extremely healthy, and I'm really firing on all cylinders, and we're super aligned, then those symptoms, i.e. the metrics, are going to be very healthy. But I'm not attached to them specifically, right? So I think, again, it's really largely semantics, but it's an energetic thing, right? I guess the simplest way to look at this is, when you look back, let me go back to what I said earlier: one day, one lifetime. Yeah. We only talked about the beginning of that, right? So if one day is an entire lifetime of learning, behind that is, of course, that, it's all we got, right? Tomorrow is a fantasy, and yesterday, is a perceived memory, right? But what's interesting is most people don't ponder to think about it, is that there is no such thing beyond what we have right now. The time is a total construct of our imagination. We think of time as linear, with the past being off to our left and the future being off to our right. Reality is tomorrow doesn't exist except as a potentiality, and yesterday doesn't exist except as a present moment awareness with memory, infusing that awareness, right? So, and that's a true statement, but what I'm going with this is, let's back it up and say, what if we did treat each day as a unit, which the calendar says, but we didn't give any energy to tomorrow except for maximizing the potential for tomorrow today, and we didn't give any energy to the past except for extracting the maximum value from the memories of the past, right? And using it for today. Therefore, we've organized our life so that the past and the future serve us right here, right now, today, and ultimately in this moment. So I set myself up for success. I win in the mind to the morning. I've got my plan and my vision for victory. I dirt dive the day. I head off to battle with my sword and my shield. And I just start knocking down the obstacles as they come, and I learn from them, and I grow from them. And I got my team by my side, like the Spartans in a phalanx. And anytime a big obstacle comes our way, we just drop into our phalanx and just fend it off, right? And then, learn from it, high five, and move on. But at the end of the day, assuming we survive, right, now we want to look back at it, and we want to say, okay, hallelujah, we did a great job. This is what we learned. This is where we can do better. And so that's a win, right? These obstacles came, and we really may have stumbled, but we've figured out how to do better, how to, solve the problem. So that's a win. And now we're going to acknowledge all that, our successes, but then we're going to let it go, right? We're going to let it go. We're not going to carry it into the sleep cycle for the next day, because we need to prepare to win the next day by getting a good night's sleep and not dragging all that, all the attachment to our successes and failures, whatever they might be, with us.
It kind of reminds me too of your of the slogan here, like you got to earn your trident every day.
Yeah.
It seems like each day and every day is a new day. It's a fresh day, and you're going to go in it the best you can, and then pull up the lessons that you can from that day.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. Also, it's not like, we're also not trying to build structurally, a lifestyle that supports our family and the infrastructure and a business that can serve even more boldly. I think that's part of the excitement and the fun about the world, is that you can build wealth, but don't be attached to it, right? We were laughing the other day about Bitcoin. 2 years ago, I was like, man, I'm really intrigued with Bitcoin, so I bought 100 Bitcoin, and then after Mt. Gox got hacked and all these things, I was like, and then I needed some money for something, I can't remember what, so I sold all but 5, right? So I had, in today's dollars, the Bitcoin is $2,400 today. I had $240,000 in Bitcoin that I literally just walked away from because I was like, I don't need this right now. I need it for something else. And I'm laughing about it, just like I can laugh about walking away from millions of dollars at the brewery because it was such a great lesson. And wow, man, what an incredible opportunity to learn and grow. And the money will come elsewhere. You know what I mean? It wasn't meant to have those 100 Bitcoin. Maybe someday I'll have 100 Bitcoin again.
Maybe it's not Bitcoin, but something else. So that leads me to that kind of can, wrapping some of this up. But I wanted to touch on this because I feel like it has been a concentration throughout some of this episode, which is your philosophy on money and investing, and from some of the lessons that you've learned on your journey so far. I was recently listening to Tim Ferriss's philosophy on money, and he basically said, if you're making money and you're miserable, it's a bad investment. And he's like, a lot of people will invest where they can get the highest dollar return, and that makes sense but if you really think about what you actually value, then it doesn't make sense because it's negating from the very thing that you value, which it could be freedom or whatever it is. So if it doesn't add value to your life, and if it doesn't give you more freedom, he says it's not worth it. If you're making a lot of money and you're also miserable and you can't sleep at night, then it's a bad investment. So that was his. And I really like that. And it got me thinking a lot about, okay, so, investing and putting money in different places. So I'm curious for yourself, your philosophy on money and investing.
Well, I think Tim's got some great insight there. For me, it's about fixed versus flow. So there's a certain amount of money. To me, money is energy, right? So if you serve a few people, then you'll get a few dollars. If you serve a freaking massive population of people, then you're going to end up accruing a massive, amount of dollars as a result of that. Now, there's different ways to serve, right? My type of service is different than, let's say, the real estate developer's service. So there's this concept of money as a representation of value that's been created and delivered, right? So in that sense, Tim is 100% on in that if you're going to serve by committing your own knowledge and time, let's say as an investment banker or trader, and you absolutely find no meaning in that work, it's strictly a financial transaction for you, and you're selling your time and your whatever knowledge you have or your pedigree to be able to earn, $5 million as an investment banker or a trader, and you're miserable and your health is being destroyed and you can't hold a family together, that is a complete waste of time, in my opinion. Having said that, if you look at that and say, you know what, I have this knowledge and I'm going to serve, by offering this knowledge to the American economy, and I'm going to do it for 10 years. And my goal, my vision is to accrue $10 million. And then with that $10 million, I'm going to take half of it and I'm going to, start a business that is, really aligned with my passion and can serve people in total alignment and joy. And then I'm going to take the other 5 and donate it to charity or something like that. Wow. That all of a sudden starts to make a lot of sense for me. You know what I mean? Even though I had to suck it up for 10 years in investment banking. And I have quite a few friends who actually did exactly that. And I don't judge them at all. And then they think that was time well spent, right? So that's kind of like if you're selling your time and knowledge for money, that it's helpful that what you do, you like it, but it's not radically necessary because it's not entirely necessary because you can find a way to find meaning in what you're doing, right? And a lot of people actually that stumble upon that when we go through our training, because they say, hey, Mark, you talk about, really getting clear about your purpose and passion. And I've been in my job, or I've run this business now, and it's a big business, and I can't walk away from it because it's supporting, so many people, and it's supporting my family, but I don't find any passion or meaning. Are you saying that I should just walk away from it and do something I'm passionate about? I said, no, I'm not suggesting that at all. I would suggest that you find a way to find more meaning in what it is that you're doing every day. So, it might be to just change up the mission plan so that you can, let's say you're passionate about the environment and you want to go invest in green companies and you want to be part of that. Well, why not invest in green through your own company by, becoming a B corporation, or, embracing conscious capitalism and those types of things. Find more meaning, shift up and change the focus and the ethos of your organization, even if you just make widgets. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, the other thing is, like, if you're going to invest, so if you serve enough, if you scales tip in your favor and you have excess flow, then that you can either flow that back into the world through good works. That's why I started the Courage Foundation. And then if you have excess flow, additionally, you want to store some nuts for a rainy day. And some, you can store a lot of nuts because, why not, right? If you got the nuts, you might as well store them, So then it becomes a matter of where do you put that money? And my sense is, just like I was talking about the Bitcoin, is you make a choice and then you let it go, and you hire experts and you let it go. You shouldn't be thinking about your stored investment, because otherwise you're starting to get attached to it. So if you're sitting there looking at your bank account every day and you're tracking the stock market because, oh my God, my portfolio's down 5%. I mean, then you become a slave to your stored value. So my sense is that once you store it, let the experts vet the experts, make sure you get the best you can, diversify as best as you can, and then just store it and forget it, right? And add to it. Now, and occasionally, once a quarter, I don't know, whatever rhythm is right for you, you just evaluate and make sure it's still right, still the best. I'll take a look at Bitcoin again in the future. I timed it exactly opposite, right? So I've had plenty of those where I just got it so wrong, so off, and I just blew it. But whatever, you know what I mean? There's other ones that have gone the opposite direction, and net, it really hasn't affected the store value that much. But I don't sit around thinking about it, and I don't. Yeah. It doesn't bring me misery if I lose $240,000 in Bitcoin. It's something to kind of laugh about and be like, wow, man, I really blew that one.
It's a good story.
Hopefully.
You get to share it on a podcast like this. What is next for yourself here? What are you excited for the rest of the year? Any big projects that feel free to share.
Yeah, thanks for that. I appreciate it. Tons of new stuff. So at SealFit, we've launched something called SealFit Bootcamp. Andrew, one of the things that we noticed over the years, like I started SealFit with the most challenging training. It's known as the most challenging training in the world outside of the actual SEAL training itself. It's called Kokoro Camp. And then we were trying, okay, let's do the next thing that's not quite as hard. So we launched the 20X, which is 12 hours of nonstop training. But most people looked at SealFit and said, well, it's kind of like an advanced degree, right? And I got to get my undergraduate first. So I'm going to go to CrossFit or just go to the gym to get in shape to do SealFit. So we said, no, that's actually not accurate. We're going to help you get up to speed and learn the fundamental skills and movements. So that's what SealFit Bootcamp is. And it's a digital program led by myself and my coaches, where we teach you the physical, mental skills of SealFit through kind of a do-it-at-home training program. You need very, very simple tools like a pull-up bar, sandbag, and a set of dumbbells and a jump rope, and you're good to go. So I'm excited about that. We're literally just launched that, and it's got, we're getting it out in the marketplace. That can be found at sealfit.com. So that's cool. Unbeatable Mind, I'm working on another book, but it's not going to be done till the end of the year is my target. Yeah. But that's going to be kind of the next iteration of the whole philosophy and training system, and I'm really excited about that. And then we're also launching a certification program for Unbeatable Mind, where we're going to be certifying or offering a certification program for someone who wants to coach people in the model. So that's going to be launched this month in June as well. So unbeatablemind.com is where that information will be found, and steelfit.com is where the bootcamp can be found.
I'm really excited for these projects and also the new book and the Unbeatable Mind series. Mark, it's been a pleasure having you here on the show for a second time. A very powerful conversation touching a wide variety of different topics and very relative to where I'm at personally. And I'm going to have to tell my friend that, hey, we just talked about you on the podcast. You should definitely listen to this. But nonetheless, I know this is, I ask questions that I think my audience is thinking at the same time, and you're able to nail them. So this was a powerful episode, and I really look forward to seeing your programs and the new book come out. I'll be sure to support as much as possible.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate your, giving me the opportunity to come in and share. And yeah, this is an unusual podcast. I think you're right. It's important to talk about these things, and emotional development and, money. They're tough topics for a lot of people.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast. Hundreds of interviews and millions of downloads later, we're continuing to build an international movement, and we're just getting started. So if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a helpful review in iTunes, because it really helps the podcast grow so we can impact even more men in the world who need this. Guys, this is all about living with purpose, where every day you only do things that matter to you. You wake up, live with purpose, and take massive action towards the life you want. And always remember, love the life you have while creating the life of your dreams. Go to kfmfree.com to get a surprise bonus I've made for my listeners. Again, that's kfmfree.com for something that's changed my life, and I'm offering it to you for free. Also, check out my Amazon best-selling books that I've written for you to help you crush life at kfmauthor.com. Again, that's kfmauthor.com to see all the books I've created to help you break through in life. This is your host, Andrew Farabee, founder of knowledgeformen.com, and I'll see you in the next episode.